Hi folks, this is Anne Marie, and this is the extended SPY report for May the 31st. This is a Friday. We have weekly options expiring. It's going to be a very interesting day. But let's take a look at actually what's been going on. We take a look at the hourly chart here. We can see this level that I drew prior to the day beginning is very, very valid. We came in what is that, a 5 o'clock? That's a pop up. So we did gap up into the region on top of this area. If we open up at the pivot and we pop up into the area, we know at the very least we're going to go to R1, potentially R2. What we've been dancing around is this pivot. Very, very important that we hold the pivot. If we lose the pivot for this week and end up below it, it could be telegraphing a signal that we have a little bit more pullback that's on the way. By and large, however, all we're doing is chopping around. Look at what's happened to this 50. It's completely flat. A little bit of downside trending. We closed underneath it. We also closed underneath the weekly VWAP, but in the end, still holding support. So what's happened? No resolution whatsoever. Let's take a look at this on a daily. Oh, isn't this lovely? Motive wave now will allow us to overlay, or maybe it always allowed us to overlay. I just never saw it. I think it's a beautiful thing. So we can embed all kinds of things on top of each other, just so long as they have the same trading measurements, or else it just won't make that much sense. All right, so here we are, noisy. Now, what's happening is, I should show you this. It's very, very important for us to consider it at least. Is we've got ourselves a little bit of trending event that looks, pretty good, really. Good for a breakout somewhere, right? So we're going to watch for the loss of tomorrow's daily pivot. So we're going to shift this number down here, 165.18. And based on that formation, well, it looks a little messy when we got it close up, right? But this 165.18 should give us the breakdown action that we're looking for, with the first target coming in to this area right here and the second target coming into this area. That number is 164.49, 163.75. And that ought to do it for that event. I do believe this will break us down. Now, if we're looking at it a little bit more closely, we can see clearly. Let's copy this and then paste. We can see clearly that we have initial shorting action at 165.78. We can short it right there. It pulls into the 165.18. It loses that area. It's going to come into the 164.49. So we can trade from this range to the top of these particular levels, provided that this action actually holds, right? And I think it should, until we break out or down, and then we have a really nice continuation pattern that will likely follow us through. In the end, we've got a little bit of sideways action that just really needs to resolve, but as we are making lower highs and higher lows, we can't go like that infinitely. Of course, we've got to break, but the longer we squeeze in that event, the sharper the break on either level. So here's the thought. Aggressive short below 165.78. Aggressive long going to be at the breach of 164.64, with the first target being somewhere around 167.10. Yeah? So these numbers also will be sitting in the blog, but that does look like a nice little congestion space. 167.11, and then, you know, the top of this region right here at R3. Now, we do reject these R3 regions quite well, but we'll see what happens, right, for the pivot event, that daily pivot. You know, getting up over the weekly pivot is going to be the key at the end of the week, but we'll see. I think it's going to be a pretty interesting trading space tomorrow, provided we break and we don't chop around. Same sort of formation here, right? We've got this price action, not as clean in terms of slope, from above certainly, from underneath maybe a little bit more, but again, what we are doing here, look at how much stronger the IWM continues to be. It's sitting above the weekly pivot, it's sitting above the 50 and above the weekly VWAP, right? Notice how important this level was that I placed here. It danced around it all day. Here's a tip about trading these things. If something bounces off a level, like this, the weekly pivot and the daily pivot, right on top of each other, listen, that's a buy point, right? If you are holding the region and you're already in an uptrend, that's a buy event. It's going to come into frontline resistance. If you don't get it the first time and you get it on the retest, that's a very, very good place to take the long. The fact that it's stalling here really is the next space. Let's see. If I want to leave this here, I probably would shift it down a little bit. Right? Maybe. Actually, we probably ought to make the midline event between the pivot and resistance level 1. Yeah, I like that. That's good. Okay, so now we've got this up here as the breakout level, 99.13. That's going to trigger the long. It's probably going to cut right through resistance level 1 because it's doing all the work down here. Buyers and sellers will argue here a little bit, but it should resolve to the upside. Probably, I'm going to say congestion might bring it to there, right? And then if it breaches over the top, we're going to be looking at 99.83. So I'm going to do that also. So here are our top line targets as we move through the region. Yeah? Yeah. Definitely. Okay, so the breakout 99.13, that's a very, very nice trade. Now, again, if we pull back here and start popping off this 50, it's going to make another higher low after a relative higher high event, and that means we can go long, right? So watch that there. Now, by the same token, if we lose this region right here, this pivot action event right here, if we lose that level, 98.30, gonna be a short. Into where? 97.90. Could be that it pops into here, but I doubt it. I think if it falls in here, it's going to come down into this space easily. If it fails here, it's going to come down into this noise action right here at 97.57, right? That's going to be the movement that we will anticipate here. If it loses 97.57, chances are it's going to come all the way down into this 96.97 area. Now, we've got a very big week ahead of us with a lot of monthly releases. Perhaps this is what the market is waiting for to get out of this zone that we've got here. So I'll be watching next week for the real breakout action. We're going to watch for continuation. Again, if we fall in here in between the two VWAPs, we will come to at least the 50% level, definitely in my mind. If we lose this area, we just have to give it a little time to choke through it, and we could easily come down into the monthly VWAP at the baseline here before bouncing again. Nothing in the charts look like they're going to roll over, folks. A lot of folks looking at divergence. Yes, it exists. It's there. But until the price pattern confirms, all we can do is just look at it. Okay, so continuing, what we have to look at here, and I apologize about the break, let's take a look at the levels. Above the weekly pivot, the Qs have resumed with some strength. It did not retrace completely. So now we have this nice long wave here, sitting up above resistance level 1, the 50, the weekly VWAP. So today now, what we'll need to see to go long is really, I would say, the breach of 74.12 or the pullback and bounce off of 73.80. If we try to get long before that, there's going to be a little bit of trouble, I would imagine. Why did this stop there? See, that doesn't look natural. So there's definitely further to go there. So we would move from 74.12 to 74.43 to 74.58. All right, that would be a good measure of what's going to happen there. If we lose this region, the 73.91 area, which we seem very close to, we could take the trade down into this area. We just don't know if the buyers are going to be here, here, or here. So it's much better to wait or take very small size before and then just initiate the trade below below that 73, 72 area. If we get below 73, 72, then we're going to come down into the prior day's pivot to test it, which should be right around there. Yeah. So we've moved from the pivot being above to below, and now we are looking at coming back in to retest that pivot and move forward, or retest the pivot and lose. Now, if it retests this pivot, it's more than halfway between the weekly and the monthly VWAPs, which suggests that it should come in all the way down here to support level 1. That's the idea right there. This rolling over, but it could just be pulling into support. If it pulls into support and begins to pop, also you have an opportunity. Now, we have a long here at 74.12, but if we come into 73.72 and we hold the region and recapture 73.81, we actually have an opportunity to go long here as well if we've popped and held the area. So this is a very, very tricky space. You're going to have to watch for it. Look at your SMI, see that it's moving to the upside, and you ought to be okay there on the pop up. Good luck trading today.